you and I were talking about this whole topic of ascension.
Hmm.
And, what does that mean? So I think when it comes to having an open mind, it's even being able to look at the exact same information from a completely different perspective and go, wait a second, could this mean something else?
So yes, sir, are you ready to get into your message?
Okay. This is what the message said. He said, you must teach ascension. You do not need to understand as some try.
All right, so it's time for our Higher Conversations on Aligning Channel with Seeds of Awakening show.
And I'm Dina Moore with Manifesting Minds.
And I want to
I
welcome you for
remember this time.
yeah, right. And I want to thank you for watching and for tuning in. We have conversations that are kind of outside of traditional religion. Of course, me and Dina both come from a more cultish kind of religious background. So we're just here to have some free thinking time and some time to share different thoughts and different experiences.
I want to play on that just a little bit because you're right. I came from 5 generations of being in a cult. I was in it hardcore for 38 years. I think that if I had listened to a podcast or a video like this, even just 3, 4, 5 years ago, I probably would have been like, what the heck is this craziness that they're talking about?
Hmm.
And as I'm going through this evolution or ascension or whatever you want to call it, even me now, I'm like, what the heck? What the heck?
Yeah, it's like a rabbit hole. Once you start digging, the rabbit hole goes really deep, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
information that you can learn. And now, as I was going to digging, I kind of took baby bites as I kind of was digging in. Like people would share
Mhm.
information with me, I kind of would just not believe it, or kind of just like, okay,
Yep.
listen to it, but it was kind of like, whatever. And then it would get confirmed through other information that I would learn. So that's kind of how it
Uh-huh.
happened for me.
So I would just kind of say that if you, again, you're on the skeptical side, just kind of go with the flow and see what opens up in your heart and mind and what resonates and what doesn't. When I got out of the cult, I was kind of on a mission to be completely open-minded. I would discard things and I go, wait a second. The cult trained me to do that. The cult trained me to be closed-minded. So I did let myself be kind of open to exploring other ideas. And I think that's why I am who I am today.
Yeah, as soon as I kind of read that first book that had such different philosophies and
Mhm.
different teachings, but it was still very biblical. Like it still had Jesus Christ and it had
Mhm.
other entities as well that weren't really they weren't mentioned in the Bible, but they were still very biblical. I could tell. I was like, there's other information I need to be open to, and I've just been open-minded free thinker. I call myself a space cadet pretty much. So
Yeah.
if it's
Well, let's even play a little bit more off of what you said because you and I were talking about this whole topic of ascension.
hmm.
And, what does that mean? We both watched some videos talking about Jesus and things that were mentioned in the Bible. So I think when it comes to having an open mind, it's even being able to look at the exact same information from a completely different perspective and go, wait a second, could this mean something else?
Yeah, because a lot of times when we think of ascension, we think of the rapture, we think of Jesus Christ coming down and
Mhm.
people going up with him and him saving all of us. But as I've learned, it's kind of different. It's not that at all.
Exactly, exactly. And it's one thing to read the Bible. Let's just say the Bible. Well, it's one thing to read the Bible and then read the Watchtower or read some other publication that says this is what this means. And then you kind of get brainwashed that you're only looking at it this
This
way.
way, yeah.
Yeah, when in reality, wait a second, maybe that's not what it was meant to say at all. Maybe that's not what it was about at all.
Yeah, when I was first introduced to the idea of ascension, it must have been like 2000, maybe 2003. I was on a website called merkaba.org, and it mentioned that you can ascend in this lifetime. I was like, wait a minute. First of all, if it says this lifetime, that means that it must take multiple lifetimes.
Yeah,
And I thought it was a physical thing, but it's actually more of a spiritual kind of consciousness thing. It's not necessarily a place that you go to, it's just a higher vibration that you end up going to. So that's
exactly.
kind of that's how I began to reshape my ideas. And then, as I've gone forward, I've just learned some other ideas around this whole topic of ascension. But it's very fascinating actually when you think about it.
So when I was actually still in the religion in 2005 when as a life coach, I was studying the law of manifesting and law of attraction, stuff like that, which was like super taboo and like totally demonic according to the religion.
Right.
But I was looking at it through the eyes of, oh my gosh, this is how God answers prayers. Oh my gosh, this is how he blesses people, you know? So I want to help you look, I want to help people kind of look at it from that angle for just a second, because that's how I justified it. And the two kind of did mesh. And it kind of started meaning that scriptures made a different kind of sense to me. Like when Jesus said things like, ask and you shall receive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't even really say if you're worthy or if God thinks it's okay or if you're deserving. I mean, he just flat out said, ask and you shall receive. And so that was manifesting to me right there. I was like, wait a second, he's telling us right here, ask and you shall receive.
Yeah.
He said, you know, he said other things like, your faith has made you well, implying that it was their emotional state, it was their belief system that cured them. He said things like, you if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you'll tell this mountain to move from here to there and it will.
Yep.
And I was thinking about, I as I was originally studying this while I was still in the eyes of the cult, I was like, okay, that's how God works in this system. But I was still looking at it way, way, way too narrow-mindedly,
Mm-hmm.
as though Jesus was a human in, you know, son of God that came to die for us, because that's what we were told. But when you act, if you look at it from this other side point, um that wasn't his message. He wasn't saying, I'm here to die for you. I mean, that was not what the brainwashing that he was
Mm-hmm.
there to do. What
Yeah,
he was
Jesus,
there to go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say Jesus was more of an example of what we can become is how I look at Jesus Christ. Whether he was a man or not, or whether there's a whole debate if he was really a man or not. I mean, that's sort of beside the point. I think that what Jesus represents is an energy that we can all become and we can all strive to become. That's really what he represents for me.
Exactly. And you know, some other things that he said was, you know, he was doing some healings, and then he said, you'll do things like this and greater than I am. You know, there was somebody else, somebody that was not one of his disciples that was doing healings and miracles and stuff like that. And Jesus was like, yeah, good. Let him. Yeah, that's what we're all going to be doing here. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, and I was thinking too, Jesus's, you know, quote unquote skills really got unlocked after he did 40 days of meditation in
Right.
silence.
Yep. 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah. So I mean, personally, like in my opinion, I'm viewing him as a highly enlightened individual that,
Mhm.
you know, the Council of Nicaea in 325 came along and said, "Hey, you know what? Let's nitpick and let's take some
Let's
of these
deify
things."
him. Let's make him a god, a demagogue, basically. When I feel like
Exactly.
Jesus was just an ascended master, he was the person who lived many lifetimes. He kind of perfected his Christ
Mhm.
consciousness. And that's what he was. He was the energy of pure love, basically, is what Jesus was. Whether
Exactly.
or not he was perfect or not, that people think he was a perfect man. That I don't know that Jesus was even perfect. I mean, what is perfection? That's also subjective. Um, I don't even look at it like that. I just look at Jesus as being an example of what we can become, basically.
Well, and I wonder, and I think too, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure Jesus ever said he was perfect.
No, I don't think he did either. I don't even
I
think
don't
he
think
ever
there's
said that was
anything
the. I don't think the Bible even says that's the standard. But
there.
Christendom has sort of reframed it that way. I feel like they've indoctrinated us all to believe that we need to be perfect humans. That's really how the cult kind of frames it. We need to be without sin. We need to be free from sin. We need to be perfect humans. I don't think that's really the standard.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. In fact, what he was really teaching is unity and harmony. You know, even when he said things like the Father and I are one, just
Hmm.
as you and I are one. You know, he says, whatever you do to the least of them, you did to me. I mean, these
Hmm.
are all principles of universal connectedness. A universal, we are all the same.
Definitely. So what did you think when you first heard the word ascension? What did that mean to you?
I had no idea what that meant. I was like, I don't know, some like hippie age.
When did you first hear it? Did you hear it recently or was it a while ago?
No, it was really fairly recently. It's probably really just within the last couple of weeks.
Oh wow. Okay.
Although I've really been, I feel like now that I've heard the term and I have a message that I would like to read. But I understand that that's something I think that I've been on, and it's also something that you've been on. We just didn't have a
Hmm.
name for it. We didn't know what it was.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've been familiar with the term for several years, but I mean, it's sort of like it's changed from what my understanding of it, and so
Mhm.
that's what's changed for me is my understanding of it. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear your message.
So I would also like to point out really quick before that too that you and I coming from these really strict biblical backgrounds, one of the videos that you and I were watching recently, the podcast people also came from ridiculously strict, like one was Seventh Day Adventist preachers kind of son. They came from like this really closed religious world.
I think the other one was the host is actually Catholic, so yes.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And then after they left religion behind, much like you and I have, and probably most of the listeners here, that's when their explosion, the
Hmm.
ascension, that's when their growth really started happening, which really made me meditate a lot on, maybe being in a cult was the best thing that could have happened to us.
Hmm.
Maybe it's what gave us the ability to look outside of the box.
To be
And
open-minded, yeah.
yeah, yeah, maybe it trained us by reverse training of what happens when you're closed-minded.
Well, yeah, because for me, I told myself I was never going to join religion again, but I
Mhm.
was going to study and learn as much about the universe and about different myths and theories and
Me
about life in
too.
general. And that's what I've really been open. I consider myself like a free thinker. Is more if someone was to ask, well, are you religious? Well, no, I'm not religious, but I always say I'm a spiritual, but really I'm just a free thinker is what it is.
Well, that religion point is a good thing because I was even thinking going back to Jesus, he had a whip and he drove the money makers out of the temple.
Hmm.
And even what he had said right then is he says, "You have made my father's holy place a place of business, a place of business." And I really think that, not that he was saying that the religion was correct, but what he was saying was they monetized religion. They absolutely monetized religion and spirituality. And that's what he was raging against.
He's writing us basically the current common system that exists both in the United States because government and religion are kind of intertwined. They're all a control system to keep us in kind of acting right, spending our money, giving our money to the government. It's all just a control
Mhm.
system, to get us thinking a certain way, so they can do what they want to do, basically.
Exactly. To create a barrier
Hmm.
between us and our connection to the divine as our birthright, really.
Hmm. True enough. So yes, sir, are you ready to get into your message?
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
So, as I was meditating on this idea of ascension, that's when this message came to me, and different from some of the other ones where it seemed to be more of like a feminine energy. This was absolutely 100% a very strong masculine energy, as though it were someone like Jesus, a very masculine presence. And this is what the message said. He said, "You must teach ascension. You do not need to understand as some try, for it's too much. You'll lose them. Ascension is simple. Be one with the Creator, love yourself and all. Ascension means understanding that we are all, that this life is but a drop of nothing, a place to learn. Who taught me? The words came from the Creator, who is within. You must find your own voice and speak from your source. You already know. Speak to them as they understand. Too much knowledge is worse than none, for it can confuse. Truth is simple. They will know it in their hearts. Head knowledge unleashes more ego and haughtiness. The simple truth is what you must share: love, gratitude, and connection to our Creator. So then I said, "Can I speak to him?" Meaning the Creator. And he says, "You do every day." Every message is from the Creator in any form, for we are all Him, expressions of Him. He is eternal, as are we. This you know. He is not God, He is the source, the Creator, infinite love and power. He is not fleshly, He is source, consciousness, and He is in us all. One messenger is not greater than another. All messages are source. You are source. The voice within and without are His, and yours is one. We have given you today the two creator cards, for you are the creator as he is within. And I said, what does he want? And he says, nothing. Want is fleshly. Ascension simply is the way, the truth, the light. It just is. It is not a path. It just is. And then I said, what happens if someone chooses not to ascend? And he says, souls are not lost, for they too are the creator. But energy is reabsorbed and redistributed. It is not punishment, it just is. Nothing is ever lost. The energy of your flesh is still energy that continues forever after you have left this body. And then I said, why is there so much badness? Why do people do evil things? And he said, because energy operates in many frequencies and they can condense. This too is the way. There is much revealing in this world. There is much growth. There is much refinement here. But this world has forgotten source. They have lost the connection to the creator, and the energy is condensing rapidly. This world, as it is known, can be lost, but it will return as nothing is lost. You cannot fully access the frequency of creation without knowing the darkness. The darkness is useful, it is balance. It must be so. Suffering is not suffering when you choose to ascend. Nothing suffers. The flesh feels because it has not ascended. What happens to the body does not touch the soul. This is the truth you have always known, and it is so. Ask and you shall receive, but also be surrounded by your ask, for it is already so.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. That's an amazing message there. There's so much to unpack with that conversation, definitely.
I know, right?
So, I mean, this kind of confirms everything that I've been feeling, that I've been sensing, what my gut has told me about creation, about God, about our lives. Like, that basically tells us that we don't die. We're universal beings. We live forever,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
We're God. We are gods in the flesh, basically. And even asked, can I talk to God? And he said, you're talking to God all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You know what I think was interesting about this message too is you and I had talked about a bajillion different topics that we want to talk about, and this
mhm,
one had slightly come up. And my opinion was, I don't know, I'm not really the expert. I don't really know if I know enough. I can't
yep.
explain it like some of these other people. And apparently maybe that's a good thing.
Well, I think he gave you the words. He explained it for you. Like your message really explained it in a concise and easy, understandable way.
Yeah. You know, I was also thinking about Jesus too, and the way that he spoke to people was not in like this high,
Mm-mm.
lofty. I mean, he really met people where they were. Like the woman at the well, he says, you know, give me water, and she says, you don't have a bucket, and he says, if you knew who I was, you would ask me for water, and I'd give you eternal water. You know,
Yep.
he really simplified things, which is why today I was like, all right, let's go ahead and talk about it because,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't have everything figured out, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we're all meeting here on the same page.
Exactly. And it's always what the first grader can teach the kindergartner. Like you just have to be a little bit more ahead of the next person to teach them, really.
Right. You know, we're all on this ascension growth process. We're all doing this together. And, you know, Jesus said the greatest law of all is love.
Hmm.
Love. That's it. Love your brother as yourself. Love, and for love. That's it.
And it seems like the ascension process will happen naturally if you just start having those loving feelings. And also,
Hmm.
the other message that I got when you asked about why is there pain and suffering, well, that helps us understand life and love better if we understand what the opposite is.
Yeah, right?
Hmm.
And I was coaching somebody probably about a year and a half ago, and these words came to me because they had gone through a very physical trauma. It was an abuse, it was a really horrible event, and they were super devastated trying to get over the physical abuse of what had happened. And I told them, I said, you know, you are the same person today as you were last week. What happens to the body does not touch the soul.
Hmm.
And those are the words that came through in the message today. And I know that that's what he meant. He says, what happens to the body does not touch the soul. This is a truth you have always known. And it is so. You know, I really do feel like that, you know, being an eternal soul, which I now believe us to be, you know, the 5 minutes of suffering in this one existence really doesn't mean anything in the great, huge scheme of things, you know?
Yep.
whatever fleshly things that we go through, does it really, really impact the soul on an eternal level?
It doesn't. I was in a meditation earlier. It was a guided meditation by
Mhm.
a guru named Muji. And
Mhm.
in his meditation, he said, don't focus on the pain because it's all passing. Everything in life passes. And it really does. Like everything is temporary, he was saying. And it's really the truth that whatever we're experiencing now, it's not going to be experienced tomorrow. And it is not permanent. So yes, definitely that. I agree with that.
Well, that makes me think of what we were talking about last week about the reality of time. The message that I got about time was there is no time. It's all in the moment. In the past and the future, it's all the same. So if you're
Hmm.
focusing on that pain, you're going to recreate it. It isn't in the past. You're living it right in this
Right.
moment.
Yep. 100%.
And in my coaching, as I'm coaching people, that's usually one of the things that I have to help them reframe first. Most traditional therapy sucks because you start, tell me your trauma, tell me what happened to you. And as you start telling your trauma, the body and the brain can't help but feel it all over again. It's like you're reliving the experience.
Yep.
That concept of time, I think, kind of helps us understand. So there's the neurological reason of why that works. But even from this process, this concept of time, you're living in the past. You're recreating the past. You're recreating that pain again into the future,
Hmm.
and that's not fun. That's not the point.
So what are your major takeaways from this message, Tina?
I think my major takeaway of this really is, don't feel like you have to know all the answers. You start somewhere. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you start at the beginning, and we grow from there. Also, I really like the knowledge can bring up ego and haughtiness. So the more you think you know everything, maybe that's damaging to the people that you're sharing it with, and maybe even damaging to yourself because we're not ready to know everything yet. Maybe our human limited experience won't fully understand everything until our ascension completely happens.
Exactly. Yep. 100%. Well, cool. This.
One other thing too, I did notice, and this was something that I did not write down, but I noticed that this being was referring to the creator in the masculine. And I asked about that. And he said, again, that's a fleshly way to look at it.
Hmm.
This is an energy. The energy that we're talking about is the power of creation and origin. And in this context, it is more of what you call a masculine energy. And so I just thought I'd kind of say that because I know, like, even coming from the religious background, God is a male. Maybe sometimes we can have a little bit of a conflict with that. And maybe that's actually a trauma that we need to resolve,
Yeah. It
because
does.
just like good and evil, you have to have the good, you have to have the bad. I think finding the balance between feminine divinity and masculine divinity is also something that we need both of.
It's all one source. It's all the
Mhm.
same thing at the end of the day.
It's all the same thing at the end of the day. Yep.
Well, very well. I enjoyed this conversation. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share
Give
this
us
content,
comments.
leave a comment, definitely. Yeah. Anything else you want to close out with, Dina?
I would really love to hear comments on this because I am not claiming to be the expert here by any means. And your comments will stimulate further conversations and further meditations for both of us. And so make sure you share what you're thinking.
Definitely. So this is Monty Channel,
And Dina Moore with Manifesting Minds.
and we'll see you soon. Peace.